A look now at what's at stake in the states on Tuesday. We begin with the 87 legislative chambers up for election across the country, and from Colorado to New Hampshire, Democrats are hoping to make significant gains after nearly a decade of Republican dominance. Tuesday's results will have far-reaching consequences as states gear up for redistricting following the 2020 census. Former Florida Congressman and Attorney General Bill McCollum is chairman of the Republican State Leadership Committee, an organization dedicated to gaining and maintaining Republican control of state legislative bodies across the country. So, Bill, welcome. Good to see you again. This has been one of the great Republican successes under the radar, gaining something like 968 seats under President Obama. They now control 26 governorships and both bodies in the legislature. Democrats only 8. But is this the year that the Democrats start to whittle away at that advantage?
Well, it may be whittle, but it's not going to be a big blue wave. When we won the big blue wave, or red wave, I should say, back in 2010, Republicans flipped 21 legislative bodies. That was a big, big number. We also won over 700 seats in that election. I don't see anything like that on the horizon in this election for the Democrats. Now, we do have contested hot races, and we've got several legislative bodies that are clearly on the line this particular time, and I think they're going to be real contests. But it's very interesting. Their votes, all of them, are same toss-up type situations that they've been in every election cycle we've had for quite some time now. So it's just a matter of who goes out to vote, like it is in many of these other races, but they're real close races in some of these states.
Now tell our listeners why this matters. I mean, one reason we mentioned redistricting. You got that coming up on 2010. That's going to be 2020 after the census. That's the next census. That's crucial because if you control one legislative body, then you can offset a Democratic governor, say. Why else does it matter?
It's congressional redistricting, but it's also important for the states themselves, because in the states we've had great success with Republican governors and Republican legislatures in a number of these states. The taxes have been lower, the economies have boomed, we put school choice into place in many cases, educational reform, right to work, many other things that have caused those states to do quite well, whereas the states controlled by the Democrats, like in Connecticut and places that are Oregon and other places, haven't done nearly as well. But going back to redistricting for a minute, the money that's in this is enormous. The Republican State Leadership Committee is the only national Republican organization that puts money in nationally to the state legislative races. We put this cycle somewhere between $45 and $50 million. That is about a 25% increase over the last cycle, but the Democrats are exponentially larger. They're putting hundreds of millions of dollars to try to win back these various races and legislative bodies in the states. And they put them in all kinds of places. Now, we see close races. For example, we've got only one-seat majorities in Colorado, in a place like New York State, which has been Republican most of the time the last half century.
The Senate, state Senate.
There's the state Senate. That's definitely in jeopardy. It's the Colorado Senate as well. In Maine, that's the Senate there. In New Hampshire, both the Senate and the House. Those are really tough for us, but we still are in a fighting chance of winning them. Others that are much more likely to go our way, but still are going to be very close, are Wisconsin Senate, both the Senate and the House in Minnesota, both the Senate and the House in Michigan. In Pennsylvania, that I think will win both of them, but the Senate and the House are being contested very strongly with a lot of Democrat money. In my home state of Florida, the state Senate is. I think we hold that, as we should hold Arizona and the other states that we're talking about. But it's interesting how much money they put.
Well, let me ask you about that money. Where is that money coming from? I mean, is this coming from a lot of big donors, the Mike Bloombergs, the George Soroses, and so on? Or because I know, remember, Eric Holder made a specific announcement that he was going to try to raise money with redistricting in mind to win these races.
Well, that's right. He raised, we think, somewhere in the neighborhood of the $40 million that he said he was going to for the Congressional Redistricting Committee that he and President Obama set up. We don't know precisely where that money came from because it interchanges a lot. But we also know there's a group called Forward Majority that just put $1.8 million, for example, into several Florida House races just last week. We also have the Center for Public Policy, which is going very much a left side group that's put millions of dollars in. They say they're going to spend 40 to 60 million. We don't know where all that's coming from, and that's in addition to the money that's coming out of the Soros group, coming out of the Steyer group, coming out of the Bloomberg group on the gun issue, coming out of the pro-choice movement, Planned Parenthood, or coming from the unions and the trial lawyers. Now, presumably some of the money is coming from trial lawyers and Hollywood types into these other groups, but it's literally hundreds of millions. It's an exponential increase in what's been spent before. Now, their objective is to win the control for 2021. So this is a step process, and we're very concerned, of course, to hold that.
Are there any legislatures now held by Democrats in states where you think you have a fighting chance to turn them your way? Because you're playing defense for the most part, but what do you want to turn going on offense?
Well, the interesting part is that despite being at the high water mark, 67 of 99 bodies that we've been at forever, really, we still think we can win in Connecticut. Connecticut is a state where you heard earlier about the governor's race.
Right.
We have a tie for the Senate. We should be able to win the Senate there. We may be able to win the House. It's about 4 seats difference there. So we feel real good about that one. Alaska's another one where we think we've got a chance of really nailing that down. I think there are a number of states where we could pull some surprises that are still out there, but yes, we're mostly on defense because we are at the high water mark, and we will probably lose some. I don't think we're going to lose very many, but we probably will, to be realistic. I want to add one other thing, if I can, Paul, and that is that Right Women Right Now and the Future Majority Project, we put $20 million into in the past few years, and we have increased enormously the number of Hispanics and ethnic minority and women candidates in the state legislative races and in the state legislatures in this country. And I'm very proud of that. And it has a big part to do with why we're doing well.
Okay. Well, thank you, Bill McCollum. Appreciate your coming in.